Hi, my name is Luke Griffith and I'm a cloud engineer at G Research. Most recently, I've been working on cloud adoption and cloud automation. I'm here today to talk a little bit about how G Research use Ansible and the different things and different tools we integrate together with Ansible. It's a large open source framework, and you look at things like just GitHub statistics and kind of popularity in the community. You can't see why it was adopted so well. When it comes to releases, commits, and contributors, Ansible's head and shoulders above the competitors. At G Research, we have a core number of infrastructure components that have been Ansibleized, and we use Ansible to glue together and automate these systems. We deploy things like container platforms, tooling like Docker. Along with that, we have big data systems and storage infrastructure, cloud infrastructure and onboarding automation, and VDI. These are just some of the core components that at G Research we use Ansible to glue together and automate to ease operators' duties and responsibilities. We also use it to drive a CI/CD workflow and a GitOps way of working. This enables us to run kind of self-service infrastructure changes through things like GitHub pull requests and actually deploy and make changes to infrastructure the second code hits master. We also use Ansible to help us test and integrate infrastructure. So we know that when things hit production, it's been tested and we feel confident about the code that's in there. One of the unique things we do at G Research is deploy our Windows infrastructure. From the image build to actually deployment of desktops of Windows 10 and Windows Server. We use tooling like PowerShell DSC and Chocolatey and glue that together with Ansible to deploy vast arrays of servers and workstations. We even do things like patching and maintenance with this. As a cloud engineer, I get most excited about using tooling like HashiCorp's product, Terraform and Vault, and gluing these together to help us automate the cloud. Things like account onboarding and IAM baselining in AWS, and even project onboarding in OpenStack. Ansible helps us deploy and kind of manage these environments and enable kind of self-service workflows through this. Tumacat. How G Research run Ansible? At G Research, we run Ansible in a number of ways and actually use platforms and services to help us deploy that into production. We use tooling like AWX and Jenkins to give us a CI/CD workflow so that when commits are made in Git or releases are made in Git, that webhooks automatically invoke and deploy the most recent code. Now this is used in things like automated testing to ensure that newer feature branches and newer releases are tested before they hit production. We also, for production environments, use AWX, and this is done to kind of automate runbooks for operators, but also to allow servers to call back and configure themselves. Generally, if running potentially a known process to resolve incidents, you would have an analyst kick off a job in AWX that will invoke Ansible, but also with cloud infrastructure and deployments, we also have hosts self-initiate the callback plugin. And this is when the host comes alive and speaks to AWX, shouting out to be configured. And this would cause AWX to invoke and call back to the server and start that configuration process. When developing playbooks and working locally, before you commit to Git, generally we would actually run this locally. So we wouldn't be kind of calling for a service, but the developer would call straight into Ansible using the command line to configure the end node. And this allows better turnaround time when it comes to debugging and developing new playbooks. Generally, when developing playbooks, the CI/CD process can be too much. So we generally enable our developers, our infrastructure developers, to directly use Ansible against sandbox environments. So this will allow a workflow of a user to actually create playbooks directly on their machine and deploy straight to the end infrastructure. Running AWX with integrity. One of the things we want to know of our production deployments is that we're running checkouts that have been approved and tested. but also that we're not running anything that could potentially be malicious. One way we achieved that is by using the configurer within AWX. And the way we've implemented it is that when we build and deploy our AWX instances, we attach a local credential to a project called the configurer. This credential actually is the admin access to AWX, and through deploying this project as an admin-only deployment, we can actually have the configurer locally configure the AWX API to add tasks and hosts and projects to it. What this enables is a source-controlled way and a tested way of configuring AWX that's not done by a human. So you don't have anyone logging in to add projects, it's all done from code. And with that, we have kind of integrity around the deployment, but we also have auditability from the VCS logs and the ability to look back at time and see what's changed. Coupling this with the callback plugin to production environments, it enables a completely codified deployment of our configuration and our infrastructure. Of course, with this, we have all the configuration mastered from Git, and once again, that is tested. Our deployment of AWX is stateless, which means that we can blow this away at any point and rebuild it. What is stored in the actual database, we don't care. The only thing that potentially might be important is failures of jobs, which we log externally anyway. So the benefit of having a completely codified deployment like this is that if we do have a failure, we can just completely blow it away and rebuild it to a known configuration and a known baseline that we're happy with. I hope that's been informative. Thank you for your time.